Caused quite a stir across the state and also put a damper on the governor's vacation, albeit only briefly. After sending out two short statements, the governor held a conference call late this afternoon to provide updates on the situation to reporters. Now, here to talk about whether that response was appropriate are our insiders, veterans of state politics who like to share their expertise from time to time, thankfully. Joining me in the studio is former New York State Republican Party Executive Director Brendan Quinn. Also with us from New York City is Richie Fife. He's the former campaign manager for Governor Patterson, now a consultant. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Hello, how are you? Richie, welcome back.
Good to be here.
So the governor is on vacation. He was until recently at an undisclosed location somewhere in New York State. And only today, after many times of asking, were we told he is on Long Island. Then he didn't make any appearances. He did speak to reporters by phone. Is that enough? I mean, people are a little bit freaked out. I know it wasn't a huge deal, but, you know, Brendan?
People would like to know where he is. They'd like to see him. A real leader shows up when something happens. If it was a more serious or a higher on the Richter scale and there was some damage or lives in danger, he should have been there.
Well, and he would have. You would have expected that he probably would have, right?
But he wasn't there.
I think that's right. I think that.
Go ahead, Richie.
I think that's right. But given the governor's personality and his hands-on approach, I don't think anybody doubts that he was in constant contact with what's going on. And if the need did arise, he would be there. I think, these things become a problem when the state or the city's not responding, like you had with the snowstorm here in New York City. It wouldn't have been an issue that Mayor Bloomberg was out of town if the city's cleanup had worked, but it didn't. In this case, I think the state's response had been right. There are no injuries, there's no suffering around the state, and I think if there is, the governor will be there and take charge.
But if you go back and look at the snowstorm and you look at what happened with the mayor and his lack of response and no leadership coming out of City Hall, you would think the governor would want to step up and show real leadership at this time.
Yeah, and you know what? Mayor Bloomberg got right on it. Now, Mayor Bloomberg happened to have been at City Hall. I know, Richie, you're down there in the city. I mean, Mayor Bloomberg happened to have been at City Hall. He was evacuated from City Hall. He ran into a bunch of reporters who were also evacuated from the area. And then he jumped right on there and gave a press conference. Now, interestingly, the president is also on vacation, and he handled this from the golf course, is my understanding. Is that appropriate?
Well, I think what you also don't want to do is overreact or try to showboat the issue. And I think Governor Cuomo, throughout his first term, I think has been very good at not grandstanding, of working hard, of getting the job done. And I think in this case, the state's response has been good. There is no damage around, and I think the governor's response has been right.
Yeah, that's interesting. The president took a lot of flack for going on vacation, Brendan, and the governor has not taken any similar flack. I mean, I don't think anybody says Governor Cuomo didn't get enough accomplished and really shouldn't be on vacation and needs to be in Albany working away, plugging at whatever it is that he's got left on his agenda. The president, on the other hand, there are people who have said he shouldn't be in Martha's Vineyard.
Well, we're going to shake the earth a little bit right now. I'm going to say something nice about Andrew Cuomo.
I am shocked.
He actually did a decent job in this legislative session and things got accomplished. But if you go back, people want to see a leader during this type of situation. People want to see the measured response Richard's talking about. However, they still want to see the leader. All the other mechanisms of the state are in place. They still want to see the guys in charge, the guy they voted into office.
Right.
They're not happy with the president because there's pictures of him are on vacation, he's going away, and there is a financial crisis, there's a debt limit crisis. Everyone's concerned about their paycheck, everyone's concerned about their pocketbook, so they want to know what's going on. Why is he on vacation when they're worried about their salaries?
Yeah, interesting. Do you think that, Richie, one of the reasons why the governor's office is not giving out a lot of information about his vacation destination is because they don't want to have pictures of him on the beach? So, yes, he's entitled to a vacation, but maybe we don't want to see that.
I think they are very conscious of the optics of what's going on and pictures of that. But I think it's also been consistent with how he's conducted himself throughout his whole term in office, and even as Attorney General, which is not going out there just for the sake of going out there and being seen, of really being, working. And I think it has worked for him so far.
So, interesting today also the earthquake happens to fall on a day when Senator Greg Ball is having this hydrofracking hearing. Brendan, he happens to be a Republican, he happens to be sort of a Tea Partier, and yet he's coming down on the side of, it seems at any rate, although he's not made a formal statement, environmentalists against hydrofracking. The industry has called him out, saying that this was nothing but a sham and a setup. What's going on?
None of it makes sense. His district isn't in the southern tier, in the area where the hydrofracking is going to take place. He's been all over the map on issues throughout his time in the Assembly and the short time in the Senate. So you never know what he's going to do. He does have a tendency to showboat, and yes, he is a Republican, but he does play to the hard right on a bunch of issues. Is he just trying to go to the middle and prepare himself for re-election and try to cover his base? And because he has a bit of a, the Hudson Valley, where it is a more moderate area when you look in the southern part of his district. So I'm not quite sure what he's doing. And the big question mark is, if he lived in the southern tier, that would make sense. Not living in the southern tier, what's the purpose?
Yeah, he held this hearing, Richard, in Katona, which is a pretty tony area, and last I checked, not a drilling hotbed. Any thoughts on this?
Well, I've never been able to understand what Senator Ball has been doing. And I think one of the interesting things of the whole story, as Brendan knows, like myself, who's put together hearings, is you plan and plan, you choose a date, and then you choose one that gets overshadowed by this. And I think his hearings were probably the biggest casualty of this earthquake, which didn't seem to have much of any damage in New York.
Well,
I think getting back to your point, it is interesting that a conservative Republican is holding these hearings. I think it gives them more credence of being a sense of bipartisan issue, as with Senator Kruger and others who showed up and testified today. And I think it's a serious issue as New York moves forward and considers whether to allow the drilling.
Yeah, and clearly something that it looks like the Cuomo administration is probably going to move on. I was just going to say that it does seem unusual for him to be partnering with Democrats, and I think that even Senator Kruger, Liz Kruger that is, tweeted something to I think that her hashtag, she was live tweeting the hearing, if you can believe it, her hashtag was strange but true. So other things that might be classified in some people's minds as strange but true, George Pataki 2012. You want to kick off on that one, Mr. Fife?
Sure. I mean, I think it's when you watch the Republicans who are running as they kind of jump over each other and literally raise their hands and pledge allegiance to the Tea Party, I think anybody with some sanity would say there's an opening there to run. And I think at the same time you have an opening for fiscal conservative that people have looked for Congressman Ryan or Governor Christie to get in. Neither one of them seem to be running, so I think Governor Pataki is looking at it. That said, it's very hard to break through, as former Governor Pawlenty has found out, as Governor Huntsman is finding out, and I think Governor Pataki will find out.
The governor's expressed interest in this before. The governor's looked at this. He's probably more serious today than he has been because of what Richard said, that there seems to be an opening. I've said on your show once before, I think Mitt Romney is probably going to be the nominee. But forget where he positions himself. If you look at the timing of this, there's a very short runway to try to put this together. He has a fundraising base in New York. A lot of candidates come to New York to raise money, but he has to build an organization in 4 to 6 states in the next 30 days. And he's done things in Iowa before, but I don't know if he has relationships to be able to do something in New Hampshire, North Carolina, South Carolina, Nevada, Michigan, Florida. It's a tough thing to put together. And you can leapfrog people from state to state, and when they finish a primary or caucus in one state, move them to the next state. But you still have to have a base of operation. You got to put that together in the next 30 days. That's going to be a tough thing to push.
Richard?
And it's a long ways to the states like Florida, New York, California, where he might be able to do well to kind of survive that long. What he has going for him is that the Republicans have changed the rules this year, and instead of having winner-take-all primaries, they have proportional ones. And so if you're able to get 15-20% in this multi-field race, you're able to stay in, pick up some delegates, and hopefully consolidate. I mean, I think it's a tough run getting in this late, but you know, who knows? It's been a pretty strange year.
Yeah, that's a good point. Plus, he might be able to pick up some of the people who are no longer around. He could pick up some of their operatives, maybe. But I think the biggest issue is the cash, and I think that I've discussed that before. I mean, you're talking about a lot of money, and no matter how many people hate Barack Obama, he is raising a lot of money right here in New York, as you mentioned, Brendan, right? So
the president's raised a lot of money. Governor Pataki has shown he can raise a lot of money. The biggest obstacle is going to be building an operation. If he can build that operation and get going, he may have an opening and may do well. But he's got to get that going in the next 30 days.
Okay, well, I think we're going to hear sooner rather than later, I'm pretty sure. In the meantime, I want to thank both of you for being with me. Thankfully, we all survived the quake of 2011. Mr. Richard Fife, thank you. And Brendan Quinn, thanks very much for being with me. It's good to see both of you.
Thanks for having me.